Welcome to zrTalks episode 12. We have a very special guest for you guys to unlock 2026. Our Chief Technology Officer, Sasha Duke, coming straight from London here in New York City today. Very excited to have him, as well, obviously joined with my co-founder, Jack Crevitt. Sasha, welcome. I'd love for us to just start on how you started your career and journey into the world of computer science and coding. I think you have a very interesting background that our audience would love to hear.
Yeah, sure thing. So I've been coding for quite a long time, probably from the age of 10, I'd say. And it started out with mostly stuff to do with like video games and stuff. I don't know if you guys have heard of Roblox.
Okay.
And in Roblox, you can create worlds that people can play in, and you can program stuff in them. And, you know, at the start, I was kind of just stealing other people's code and like maybe changing a couple like cosmetic things and just saying I made it. But and I guess, you know, people are doing that stuff a bit with open source as well.
Yeah, exactly. Still doing that.
So it's not that far off. But yeah, it's been, to be honest, I've always kind of known, like from quite a young age, that I wanted to like be involved in the industry in computer science. I've always spent way too much time on my computer as a kid, and yeah, I mean, it started with video games, as I mentioned, and just naturally progressed to all sorts of other things like, you know, web apps, and crypto kind of like the interest in it just came so naturally. I mean, what's so cool about crypto, and it's something I appreciate so much about working in the industry, is that the tech that you get to work on is so cutting edge and just so interesting and just different compared to, like, you know, most like programming jobs are just going to be like maintaining a database, like moving stuff in and out of it. And it's like, you know, obviously it can be interesting, but like just everything about blockchain, it's like so much depth to like the technological problems that are being solved, and it's fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting, and we'll dive a little bit into what you're doing now at Zenrock in a little bit. But I always like starting off really with like more of a macro positioning. This is our first podcast of 2026. We plan to have, you know, many more throughout the year, but it's been a really interesting past 2 years, I think, in the industry, and we're at, I think, the greatest transition period in the overall digital asset, you know, economy and ecosystem. You know, really, it's been 2 years since the IBIT BlackRock ETF launched around this time, right? I think it was January 14th, if I'm not wrong. Don't quote me on that, but it was in the month of January in 2024. And over that time, you've really seen this transition of OG holders, Bitcoin holders, kind of leave, sort of the changing of the guards, and all these TradFi institutions come in, whether it be tokenization, issuance, whether it be through stable coins, whether it be through like DeFi vault curation, which is a little smaller, but it's still there. And these institutions are really executing on their pilots that they spun up 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? And now tokenization, RWAs, real world assets, it's all at the forefront of what these institutions are doing. But the core kind of like Bitcoin OGs are kind of leaving the industry by selling their bags. So I want to get your thoughts here on where do you think we are in the industry right now, and what are some interesting catalysts that you see continuing in 2026 from the narratives I just talked about?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting time in the development of kind of the digital asset ecosystem more broadly. You're right that, you know, all the ETFs, I mean, BlackRock's and everyone else's, kind of marked the beginning of institutions really saying, okay, this is real, right? And, you know, we think about that's 2 years ago, and in the on-chain world, things have moved so fast. And I mean, we could talk about all the stuff we've built in the last like pretty much 6 months. So, I mean, it shows how fast we can move and how fast things can move on chain. But these big institutions do not move quickly, right? And so I think what this like largely represents is kind of the changing from this being something super fringe industry to something that's now completely mainstream. And I think we're actually just in like the extremely very early innings of this becoming mainstream. I mean, it's kind of mainstream insofar as people broadly, have agreed that this is going to be real. But in terms of like actually being used within, workflows, it's still essentially fringe, right? And I think that we can talk about it more, but a lot of the infrastructure that we're building is kind of driving towards that convergence point.
Yeah, it's super interesting because like when crypto first came about in the late 2000s, it was originally meant to be kind of totally separate from the existing financial system, and that's when it was started with like proper like cypherpunk kind of hacker kind of roots. And recently, in the last few years, as you've mentioned, with the huge institutional adoption, it's kind of been diverging from the initial ethos of why crypto came about. But then I'd argue it's actually starting to come back towards those roots as well, with especially the advent of the privacy meta coming back into the forefront, for example. And as you said, with the institutional adoption, it's really cementing it as becoming like integral to how businesses will operate in the future. You see like companies like Stripe, who's one of the biggest payment processors in the world, and they're moving their cross currency infrastructure to be handled by stable coins on the back end. They've done these huge buyouts of I think the company's called Bridge or something like that. And there's been a lot of these like high profile acquisitions. It seems like the really kind of established players in fintech are starting to really make use of the advantages that crypto can bring to TradFi.
It's very exciting, and I think there are many more things to be really excited about in crypto blockchain use cases in 2026. I think one point that I always come back to is that in the overall grand scheme of money movement across all the real industries in the world, crypto and even like stablecoin volumes are still quite small, right? Stablecoin volumes surpass, I think, 33 trillion, I think is the number that I've seen floating around across all these data sources. Well, that's extremely small. Forex trades 7 trillion a day. A day, that is, right? So it's still in the grand scheme of macro and top-down kind of analysis and perspectives, it's still quite small. We are now in the innings of, okay, you have all this core infra that has been built out. The rails are there. There's just not many people on the trains that are on these rails, right? And I think you start seeing tokenization, you start seeing all these ramps being built up so people could go onto these trains right now. And I think one question I think that's really interesting is that over the last year you've really seen a lot of very interesting DeFi players come up, specifically on like Hyperliquid and like DEX volumes reaching an all-time high in 2026. It's dropped down significantly, I think, over the course of the last 3 months alone. But I would ask, and put it out there for you guys, what do you think is really like a catalyst for money movement to really 10x from its 60 billion monthly level right now to 600 billion in 2 years?
I think it's probably a combination of a few factors. I think one thing that has held back crypto adoption is just user experience. It's in a lot of ways still a bit clunky. It's hard to use. It's easy to to have a catastrophic event happen where you lose your funds, and especially for less technical users.
Right.
But I think what we're going to see more and more of is as much of that as possible just abstracted away, and people will just be using applications and websites and, even through things such as their banks, and they just won't be aware of the fact that the back end is all happening on blockchains and in the crypto ecosystem.
And I think right now it's like an application is either a crypto app or not, right? And I think that blending and that merging, especially as payments and trading move on chain in an actual way, is going to be something that the user doesn't even need to know. They don't need to know. But I wonder, like, from your perspective, like, because I think that there have been so many of these different eras going back to probably when you first started building on blockchains, even just yourself locally trying some stuff. Like, how have you seen it from like the engineering's perspective change and grow, especially over like the last like 3 or 4 years, but even since however far back you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no shortage of people building like infrastructure in crypto.
Yeah.
And so you were definitely more limited in what you were able to do when a few years back. Now, like, there's so many libraries that can be used off the shelf. There's products that can be composed together. If you're working with zero knowledge, a few years back, you would have had to do everything by hand for the most part. I mean, there's certain algorithms that would have been published that you can read through the papers, maybe if you're a cryptographer, if you have cryptographers on your team. But now you can just use a library like Maiden, which was acquired by Polygon and spun out of there. But, some really serious tech that just makes it a lot easier for you to just use it in a privacy app and just get that out like in the space of months rather than years. And the same thing can be said for AI as well, where, now is the best time in history to be working in a startup, especially in tech, because you can, with a small engineering team, do what would have taken a team 5 times the size, or potentially even more, would have been needed to accomplish the same feats.
I think those are two really interesting points there. One point is that there's been so much infrastructure built in crypto over the past, let's say, 7 years. A lot of it is open source as well, right? And it's really good tech. It's been audited 13 plus times. Those companies have raised, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's all sitting there, but no one is really like utilizing them, which is a really interesting foray into the applications that could be built on this wonderful tech libraries that are all open source. And if an application builder is thinking about trying to build their infrastructure in-house with a couple of their developers and build everything from the ground up, it's extremely cumbersome process. They don't need to do that anymore because there's all this public open source libraries out there that they can leverage, bolt on into their app. You pick one library from here, one program from here, and you can really create, and complete the entire puzzle of building an application because everything is out there now.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing that in real time with, one of the products that we're launching. Get into that a little bit.
Give it a few.
Give it 20 minutes. 20 minutes in, you'll hear about what we're launching and what we have launched already. But the other point is the AI piece. You really only, if you're a talented developer and have a couple other talented developers on your team, startups could be making $100 million in revenue with 3 or 4 people nowadays, with the advent of Claude Code, advent of Claude Cowork, and the amount of efficiency that Claude specifically, from what I've seen, could bring to the table for a startup provides exponential results in terms of money and also performance for new startup builders. So it's really interesting, and I'd love to go into right now what is Zenrock doing on the AI side, and how have we brought efficiencies to our current work stack?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something we're really noticing the effects of as a small team. You know, not long ago, see, even nowadays, people still are skeptical about AI in general. You know, there's a lot of talk about AI being a bubble, and, you know, we could argue about just whether certain things are overvalued or not. I'm sure there's absolutely like companies being overvalued, things like that. But I wouldn't agree that the whole industry is a bubble. And the reason that I think a lot of people don't realize this is coding, AI when it comes to coding and AI when it comes to a lot of other things is just, it's kind of a whole different ball game. Like, when it comes to coding, coding just lends itself so well to being being generated and iterated upon using AI tools. And that's because with code, you can verify the correctness of what's being created and test it. You can write tests to check that what's being written is working as expected. You can, you know, run the compiler to check if there's any errors in what you've written in the code. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it won't compile. And you can, you know, add like a debug printing out the result of something to see if it's what you expect. And because of things like that, it means that when you bring in agentic AIs, I'm going to use Claude Code as an example because that's what we use the most at on our engineering team at Zenrock. And when you have these agentic harnesses that can loop back on themselves and check their work and see that something needs to be changed, even nowadays, they can, like, let's say you're working on the website and something doesn't look right. Previously, you would have had to try put into words what doesn't look right about a specific part of the design or the app. Now, this can be like an automated process where the AI runs the website that it's just been iterating on, and it can take a screenshot of what the app looks like and immediately see, okay, this doesn't look right. I'm just going to keep iterating. And there's, it's insane, like how much to be fully candid, I actually really don't write very much code by hand anymore.
It's cool.
Yeah, and it's insane, like how much more I can get done and how much quicker our team is able to move. It's kind of mind-blowing, honestly.
I think this is something that very few people are understanding right now. I think that most people think that there's an AI bubble because, you know, they use ChatGPT and they haven't really moved past just like, you know, open, fresh window, zero context, give a poorly written prompt, and then they see the output and they're like, okay, I mean, it's something, but it's not really that usable, right? So like, one thing that I want to click into a little bit more is like the way that we have a lot of this stuff set up, right? And like, so one thing, and you know, I want you to give more context on it, but like we have all of our code in a place where the AI can access it, right? So if I were to go in and say, hey, I have a question about the way that Zenrock works, not only can it go read all of our documents, because all of our documents can get linked, right? You put them in folders and now it has a database of context, right? And so not only can it read all of our documents, it could also then go read the code and understand actually how every little piece works. And this is incredibly powerful. And I think that, you know, one thing that we've been focused on a lot is just getting our AI usage to be as strong as possible and leveraging it to the absolute max. And so this is really, I think, two pieces. One, having like specified agents that are really good at doing specific tasks and have deep context and deep knowledge about a specific vertical, maybe not on everything else, and they're going to do it a specific way. And the other is about giving this massive like context lake, however you want to call it, where it has all the code, it has everything we've ever written, it has email exchanges between potential, we're going back with trying to make a deal and they're asking us questions about how things work and we're writing out answers. Now it has that, right? And it could reference all of this. And then on top of that, the agents, and then the output we can get is just phenomenal, right? And then the last point I'll make on that is that when you bring it back to crypto, now we have all of these incredible libraries that are off the shelf. Mm-hmm. So when you take the power, if you just could do a cross comparison, right, from like a 2021 era of like all the advanced cryptography things that you're gonna want to do, you're gonna have to write it yourself in assembly, and you have to be so knowledgeable and so just so detailed and so knowledgeable to do that well, right? And you have to write every single line by hand.
Right.
Now, to say, we have libraries that do 95% of the cryptographic things that you're going to want to do. All of the hardest parts, there's libraries for, right? And it lets you focus so much more on the product level. And now we have all this AI capabilities. I mean, it's apples to oranges. It's not even close to the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's tools you can use to, like plugins for Claude Code, for example, where there's one called Context 7, where whatever Claude is working on, it'll be able to read the documentation for anything that you're using, any libraries that you're using is always there, just within reach, so that it drastically is able to cut down mistakes and hallucinations, because it always has very easy access to just the proper instructions and just details on how it should be using various technologies correctly. Right. And it doesn't need to be have as much intervention from the user.
Right.
I found that for a long time I thought that we were hitting a bit of a plateau when it came to how good AI was getting, but especially with coding, I've found it to not really be the case, especially as of late. Previously, you could maybe let Claude run for maybe 10, 15 minutes uninterrupted, and then eventually it would stop or get stuck or just need some kind of human intervention. Mm-hmm. And of course, the more oversight, the better. You do still want to not become too detached from what you're building by delegating too much and not really paying attention and really reading through the code and understanding what's being built. I feel like can be something that people could fall into. But if you're really using these tools correctly, now I've found that I can leave Claude, and I'd say Claude is the best for this, but other AI models as well. But with Claude now, I've had an instance of Claude running for 4 hours uninterrupted, trying to debug an issue. Yeah. And there's still times where it stops making progress, and it helps to have a human there to human engineer to help guide it and just focus it. Yeah. And get it back on track. But I think we're gonna start seeing more and more of just the time, the duration, like that AI models can keep working uninterrupted. Will keep getting longer and longer. I've found, I frequently will, be coding till the early hours of the morning and need to go to bed, and then say to Claude, look, I'm going to bed. I need you to keep working on this autonomously in such a way that I won't need to come intervene because I won't be able to. Yeah. And especially if it has a good way of like testing itself and just checking what it's working on, then it can absolutely, do that. And there's been times I've woken up and gone to check my computer and it's still working. And
It's
that
incredible.
stuff blows my
Yeah,
mind. Like,
100%.
it seems like science fiction.
One more point on this is like I think especially for a user who is maybe a listener who's maybe non-technical, can you explain just like at a high level what we've built out in terms of like the AI harness and all of these different agents that 'cause I think people don't really understand what does it mean to have agents working for you? Is it just about a longer runtime? It's not. It's about having specialization. So I'm just curious like to explain that to someone and kind of how we use it at Zenrock.
Yeah, so I mean, when AI coding first became a thing, it was more about, it started off as like autocomplete, like the first kind of big products that made a huge splash on the scene were things like GitHub Copilot, where you'd be typing some code, and as you're typing it, you see like an auto-completion suggestion and it was actually pretty good at the time for, guessing like halfway through what you're typing, what the rest of what you're going to need is that you're trying to type out. And that was great. And that definitely like helped increase productivity. But we quickly completely shifted the paradigm from the AI assisted coding to more AI driven coding. And that is with the rise of agents. The reason, I guess, why they're called agents is they have a certain level of agency. They're able to take actions of their own accord, edit a file, see that, something is still not right, make another edit to it, and then realize that, oh, well, now that we've changed this part, we need to change a different part. So this is what you were talking about earlier with how we've consolidated most of our code into a single repository. It's something called a monorepo. Mm-hmm. And that means that, when you make a change to something, let's say on the blockchain, you're often going to have to also make the equivalent change on the website to support that change and to have them be synced up.
Yeah.
And so now Claude will make a change on the blockchain and just know, because it has access to the code and has read it and has the context that it needs.
Right.
But because we've consolidated all the code in a format where it's just easily accessible, that it can just go and make that change without you needing to tell it to go do that. And that extends to things that are not just code, like documentation. Like we're able to, Claude is able to consume the documentation we've written and also just write better documentation. Because it has all the context and it has everything within reach that it could possibly need. To not need so much human intervention. And that's
incredible.
It's incredible.
I mean, it just makes a lot of like conceptual sense even to someone who's not as technical as you. And I think that was a solid breakdown in terms of the consolidation of all of our code across multiple different monorepos that Claude, as an LLM, you could tell it where to go, what output to really come out with if there's a very, very specific question on our ZR chain or our MPC or our different sidecars, oracles, enshrined stuff that we have. You can get very specific information, and it permeates all different aspects of our organization as it relates to developer operations, MPC, validator operations, core blockchain and software engineering, and also a lot of the stuff that on the marketing side, the documentation side, the developer relations side, we can essentially create 10x more efficiency in our workflow by leveraging this, since all of this, massive 10,000 lines of code plus are consolidated into these repositories that we can access without having to spend potentially 5 hours in the day trying to sparse through, figure out where this one sits, where that one sits. And that efficiency is really what I come back to in terms of these startups, single-digit teams getting incredibly more efficient in how they work, and the amount of productivity just increases tenfold.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at it just from our perspective, right, I think we are near the cutting edge of AI usage. I think we use it, as much as anyone reasonably can expect. And I think we talk constantly about how we can use it more and use it more efficiently and use it across the entire firm. I think that, we're trying to figure out how we can get every single person in the entire company, regardless of function, to be using have access to our code base directly through AI. And I think that, I'm not going to make a macro call about what the prices of these assets will do, but I think that in terms of the build out and the amount of compute needed, we're so early. And I think that there may be some people listening who are kind of still in the mindset of thinking like, well, this is really just kind of a chatbot. Like, why do we need this huge data center build out? And they just don't quite understand, what this can mean for a small company. And I think that, it just means that getting 5 to 10x the output out of every single person on your team, and eventually, I think the entire on-chain world, but also the not on-chain world, is just going to move so much faster in product development. And it's just going to be a step change in speed. And I think we're kind of right at the beginning of seeing that now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's a good foray into talking about our infrastructure stack. I mean, we would be remiss to have the CTO here and not talk about our core infra. But I really want to provide a little bit of context on our core component of our infrastructure stack, which is zrChain. Yeah. And zrChain has been live for about almost a year and a half now, right? It has 52 plus validators across 22 countries, 5 continents. All of these validators are highly technical and highly respectable businesses in the entire crypto ecosystem and on-chain ecosystem. They secure, I think, cumulatively 100 billion plus stake across 20 plus blockchains. And, I would love to, help everyone understand from your perspective, why did we build zrChain, and what's kind of the reason to not leverage, Solana or another layer 1, and why is it important for other applications that we build on top of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that zrChain allows us to do that would just be so much more difficult to do without it. The initial, so zrChain is a sovereign Cosmos SDK blockchain, and the sovereignty is really the key here, because when you're building on Solana, when you're building on Ethereum, you obviously have, huge suites of apps and great technology available to you. But the whole point of these monolithic L1 blockchains is that nobody can really mess with the core protocol. You build smart contracts on top of the protocol, but the core blockchain is separate. And when you have sovereignty over the entire stack, you really open up so many more avenues of just so many more things that you can build. So I'll give some examples. So because we can modify the core code in the zrChain blockchain, we've built things like a built-in enshrined oracle. And enshrined, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it is when the oracle is actually secured by the stake of the blockchain. And so we use this oracle to determine when a deposit has been made on Bitcoin. When we've minted ZenBTC on Solana, when that mint has successfully taken place. Because blockchains are completely siloed from each other.
Right.
And there's no way of knowing what's happening on other blockchains without an oracle. But traditionally, you have to rely on third-party solutions.
Sure.
And these third-party solutions will have completely different trust mechanisms, consensus mechanisms. The model is different and often somewhat incompatible with the rest of the protocol. Whereas when you have an enshrined system, it's to get a little bit more technical, we have actually modified the consensus system of our blockchain. Normally, consensus in blockchains is reserved for just which transactions are valid and what order they happen in. And that's what blockchains were originally used to solve, is just deciding on, which transactions are real, and or when someone's trying to fake something to create a malicious fake double spend or something of the kind. And that's obviously the most important part. But with Cosmos, and specifically the consensus engine that powers it, Comet BFT, formerly known as Tendermint, Comet BFT allows you to extend the consensus to not just be about transactions and the order that they happen in, but also be about anything else you want the system to agree upon. And in our case, it's very important that all of the validators, everybody running our blockchain, all agrees on what's happening on other blockchains, because then we have the same level of security for as normal transactions happening on the blockchain as for events happening on other blockchains, that we can be confident about them being real and having happened. And that having this baked in oracle into our blockchain is kind of a superpower when you combine it with the other, technology that we work with as part of our stack, such as MPC.
Yeah.
MPC is inherently chain agnostic. It works on every blockchain. And that's because every blockchain uses the same kind of, key and signature algorithms.
Right.
And MPC can produce keys and signatures for any of those blockchains. And so when you combine the ability to control funds and apps on any blockchain with the ability to observe what happens on those blockchains, you instantly have a hub for best-in-class cross-chain app development. Because those components are everything that you would normally need, that you would normally rely on inferior solutions, inferior third-party solutions with different trust models. And honestly, our Oracle system is best in class. And we really think that eventually builders are going to realize this and realize what they can do with at the intersection of distributed MPC and Oracle's secured by the stake of the system.
Right.
That it'll be natural for anyone wanting to easily build cross-chain apps. The first thing that will pop into their mind, hopefully one day, will be zrChain.
Yeah. So it's just to kind of summarize it, it's extremely interesting, and I think it's important to dive into this technical moat because we don't spend as much time on it, But it's really two things, and the first is that the state of all these other chains is something that is enshrined at the block level. Most of the time that would sit above, right? And so most of the time that wouldn't be something that happens at the block level. It's kind of just contracts that exist on top. And that can work for certain applications, but I guess it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about it kind of conceptually feels inferior, but why is that actually inferior to our model? And then I guess on the MPC side, it makes more sense. I think if you can observe all these things, it's great, it's cool. But then to also be able to write to every single one of these blockchains, those two components working together, I think, is the superpower of zrChain. But I think that, there are other ways of achieving signatures on a variety of different chains. But I think it's the Oracle piece is so differentiated. So I mean, it'd be good to hear like how ours compares to like maybe what someone else would have to use if they were using an inferior system.
Yeah, sure. So when you look at Oracle systems such as Chainlink is obviously the biggest, most well-known Oracle platform. And because they need to provide, so let's say you have a Chainlink smart contract on Ethereum that is reporting the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If that's incorrect, and the Chainlink nodes decided to maliciously upload an updated price which was wildly off what the real price was, that could have some crazy consequences. You could trigger liquidations.
Right.
You can wreak havoc. And the way that Chainlink solves this problem is by requiring stake for to secure these to secure the Oracle, basically. And it's what secures every proof of stake blockchain is if you misbehave, you have money at stake which you will lose, or at least lose a fraction of. And just the game theory means that everyone is disincentivized from acting. Everyone acts honestly because it's in their best interest.
Right.
Of course.
And of course, Chainlink is a huge project with hundreds of millions in stake. But let's say Chainlink was in its infancy, and you wanted to use an Oracle on Ethereum, and Ethereum already has hundreds of billions worth of stake. If the amount of stake for Chainlink was small, you could, if we compared it to how it works on zrChain, it would be like the Oracle was built into Ethereum,
right,
and the hundreds of billions of stake would be, you would need to acquire like a majority of that amount, which is nobody would do. It's just not financially sane. And you don't need to worry that, okay, well, yes, Ethereum is very secure because of all this stake, but the Oracle has a much smaller amount of stake, and the way that it comes to an agreement on what is happening on other blockchains works differently to Ethereum. So there's different risks and risk models that you need to consider when it comes to the trust model. And I know it's quite a technical explanation, but when it's baked into the protocol and you know that you can always trust it as much as you can trust any other transaction that happens on the blockchain, it really is a game changer for how secure the system is.
And it's funny, like on that point, if you look at like the Bitcoin or Chainlink Oracle on Ethereum mainnet, the amount of stake behind that is probably gigantic, right? But like, think about the longer tail of different things that can happen, right? And like we've seen this already. There was the UMA example back in Poly Market where someone essentially, I don't remember the exact specifics, but I believe it was a baseball game. Someone bet on the result of a baseball game, and they realized that it would be profitable for them to buy enough UMA to alter the state of the Oracle rather than just I guess, just lose the bet, right?
Yeah, that's happened multiple times.
Happens multiple times. And like, so yeah, for certain examples, I mean, like the Bitcoin price on Ethereum mainnet, the Ethereum price on Solana mainnet, like the oracles are probably have enough stake, but especially when you start to consider the long tail,
Sure.
And multiple of these things interacting, the ability to build it into the core consensus is critical.
I think it's very interesting and very unique points of why ZR chain is important. I mean, you talked about the enshrined oracle really being important, especially on this point of like malicious intent around an oracle happens pretty frequently, more than people realize. And then you also have that combining with a multi-party computation system that's distributed that allows for cross-chain key and signature requests and generation, allows for this really unique system that enables Zenrock to really build some incredibly unique applications on top of it. And on that note,
let's talk about why don't you kick us off, Adi? Why don't you talk about this very unique application that we're about to launch? I think we're extremely excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So some background actually will be helpful here. So we started out launching products in August of 2025. We launched ZenBTC, as you all know. That's our decentralized yield-bearing wrapped Bitcoin product on Solana. In October 31st, on that Friday, we launched Zen Zcash, which is a wrapped Zcash product and asset on Solana. And really, ever since we launched Zcash, I think all of us have gotten the privacy bug.
Yeah.
And we have dove deep into the privacy narrative, trying to understand which protocols are out there that are truly private, first of all, and also seeing a lot of TVL and volume go into their pool. So on that note, ever since we started diving deep into the privacy narrative, we have launched Hush Protocol. Hush Protocol is the first fully compliant and yielding privacy layer on Solana. That's live right now. You can go to hushprotocol.xyz, shield your assets. You can also do shielded transfers, which is probably the more unique part of Hush.
Yeah.
And then you can also unshield to any address and any asset of your choosing. So I think, Sasha, let's dive deep into how does Hush actually achieve privacy?
Yeah, sure thing. So essentially, the way it works is you have some SOL that you want to perhaps send to someone else privately, or even send to a fresh account of yours privately. You can deposit it into the Hush smart contract. And once that deposit is confirmed, you'll receive a voucher for your deposit. And this voucher is powered by zero-knowledge technology, and specifically Maiden, which we came up earlier, which is, I'll go into more detail on the technical side about Maiden in a minute, but it uses these ZK stacks, which are the most, honestly, the strongest type of zero-knowledge encryption. And the way it works is, once you've received this voucher for your deposit, when you redeem the voucher, because the redemption is wrapped in this zero-knowledge proof, effectively, there is no way to link a specific deposit to a specific withdrawal event.
Right.
And not only that, but as Adi mentioned, we also have we allow for transfers within the shielded pool, and these transfers are fully encrypted. So the recipient of the transfer, the sender, the amount, the asset type, which token is it, none of that is visible to anyone except the person receiving the transfer. And this is heavily inspired by Zcash specifically, who has this same architecture where you have normal transactions, kind of akin to a Bitcoin transaction, and then you can shield those coins, move them into the shielded pool, And once they're in there, you can transact privately between anyone else in the pool, any other address. And currently, this is just there's already a lot of uses here, but we're planning to expand it to not just be a payments protocol, but just a general privacy layer for Solana, where you'll be in the future able to do complex DeFi and other run other applications, like you would, in any dApp in the crypto space, but do so without the fear of being monitored and tracked.
Yeah, I think that, just taking a step back again, we did Zcash, ZenZEC, put that on Solana, and we've just all gotten completely pilled on privacy, right? We've gotten to the point of realizing that if you look into any of the futures that we talk about, we sit in this podcast and we talk about what we think the on-chain future is going to look like. In all of those scenarios, every one scenario, you need as a user to have privacy. If you're receiving a large part of your financial life is happening directly on chain, you need privacy. And Zcash, I think, and kind of the momentum around Zcash and development around privacy has been so strong in these last couple months, and we think that there's a really good reason, because it's actually a big need that's been totally left empty for the last couple of months and years. Mm-hmm. And so what we were thinking is like, okay, as we've been talking about earlier in this podcast, we have incredibly powerful technology, both on the MPC side and the decentralized Oracle side, effectively through our chain. How can we build kind of a privacy layer, a full Turing complete computer layer that has everything completely private, but that critically also maintains the user experience that everyone knows and loves on Solana? This has always been a big thing for us, right? We think that there's so many teams that build incredible tech, but the user experience is so bad that nobody wants to use it,
exactly.
Right? So we're like, how can we build the right user experience and also kind of give the right privacy while also allowing for infinite programmability and the ability for anyone to create any application they want on this layer? And all of that coming together is what Hush really is. And so, right now, today, when we launched, it's just Jito Sol. And I want to talk a little bit more about the decision of why we chose Jito Sol. But in the future, we see this as a complete private computing layer that anything you're doing on Solana right now, or anything that people build, there'll always be new novel applications in the next couple of years build, all of that can be moved over to Hush, and we're going to continue to work on making that easier for developers to do. But let's take a second. Like, why did we decide to start with Jito Sol as the main asset for the pool?
Yeah, no, it was a really important trade-off that we were discussing internally when we were thinking about which asset to start with. I think right now there is still a massive, I wouldn't say issue, but there's inflation when you hold Sol, right, via staking rewards. And I think a lot of people on the institutional side that just hold Sol don't realize that actually.
Yeah.
That there's an inflation issue, and you have to stake your Solana.
Yeah.
That is a number one decision you have to make once you hold Solana. And we thought that if it was just Sol that was entering the shielded pool, users wouldn't have that ability to actually make their Jito Sol or their liquid stake tool, their stake Sol, actually private. And there's an opportunity cost there of like, I want privacy, but I don't want to let go of my stake because then I'm going to get screwed on inflation. So that was really the choice, and we ultimately decided as Solana users and people that hold Jito Sol that stake Solana is the first asset that we're going to allow to enter this pool, because it's very important from an opportunity cost perspective that users could actually hold Jito Sol, which is the largest stake Solana in the industry right now, while also remaining private. And that was really the decision making behind there.
Yeah, I think that this goes back to the idea, which we really try to do with all of our products, which is we're building products primarily, first and foremost, for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Things that we ourselves would want to use. And I think we were all like, okay, I mean, yeah, I would love to get the privacy that the pool gives you, but to have to give up staking yield, I wouldn't want to sit in the pool, right? And then we realized, like, well, the power of the pool is that the larger it is, the more privacy guarantees you have, right? If you think about it, if 3 people deposit $10 and then one person pulls $10 out, you know it's one of those 3. Whereas if there's 100,000 people put $10 in, one person pulls $10 out, you really have no idea who that was, right? And so our point was, we want to create a structure that encourages people and gives people the ability to stay in that pool.
Yeah.
And that was the main reason why we went with Jito Sol rather than to go with, just plain vanilla Sol.
100%. And in V1, which is out now, Hush Protocol.xyz, you could go in and shield Jito Sol and earn your staking and MEV rewards while staying private. In the future, we'll have ZenBTC, we'll have a myriad of different stable coins, and then down the line, virtually any SPL20 token could get shielded within Hush. But Jack, I want to think about this and talk a little bit more about this on like, why privacy? Like, why is it important, and why do you think the narrative is picking up steam and tailwinds right now?
Yeah, I think it's picking up tailwinds because, I think there's a huge element of it being artificially suppressed by regulators for a very, very long time, right? We had a long time, the entire previous administration, it was very difficult to build public completely public things. The idea of having any sort of privacy on blockchains was just such a non-starter. And so I think that while in the background people have continued to be very focused on this issue, it never quite was able to rise to the foreground. And then it kind of was a Pandora's box situation, right? With Zcash exploding and a lot of institutional adoption of Zcash. You have the Winklevoss with their DAT, and then you have a lot of people building different things on Zcash. A lot of Zcash products. I think
new wallet.
New wallet.
You also have the Grayscale was ETP.
Yeah,
that's out there. It's seeing a decent amount of volume actually.
Yeah, all of these different pieces. It's kind of like, okay, privacy is kind of okay to start building on, and I think that is a huge reason why it's kind of taking shape right now.
Right.
I want to make another point about the Hush protocol, because I think it's really important, is that privacy is always an area that is going to be scrutinized by regulators, because you want to make sure that when people are allowed to have privacy, that you're not letting the wrong people have privacy, right? And use a potential privacy protocol for nefarious purposes. And so I want to just talk a little bit about some of the things that we've implemented on Hush to make that really as low possibility as we possibly can, right? There's never 100%, but we've done a lot, and we've put a lot of effort in the last couple of weeks into making this possible. So the first thing is that we're doing a lot of screening at the wallet level for all SHIELD transactions. And using the vote extension that you were talking about earlier, and the ability to kind of embed other information into core consensus, we're actually embedding in a decentralized way screening methodology into the core consensus, so that if a wallet comes up on one of various screens that we're running, we're doing OFAC screening, CSEM screening, terrorist financing screening, theft screening, and multiple hops on a variety of different things. We're really trying our best to do this in the absolute most compliant way. That is all done at the protocol level, and it's something that we're really focused on, because we believe very strongly that to give privacy for everyone who's abiding by the laws and doing things the right way, you also have to make sure you're not giving privacy to people who are not.
Sure, 100%. Couldn't agree more. And we have a lot of internal kind of manuals that we follow in terms of structured reporting and compliance reporting and stuff like that we want to make sure that we do 100% correct. On the macro point, I think you touched on a very interesting part of the overall privacy tailwinds. I think, it's interesting. The beginning of this podcast, we started a lot about like the ETFs, the institutionalization of crypto, the tokenization of real world assets coming on chain. I think privacy actually goes in tandem with that.
Yeah.
If you're bullish on the institutional adoption of crypto, you're indirectly bullish on privacy. If you don't even know it, right? Because as more real world assets come on chain and you have ultra high net worth families, massive family offices, massive asset managers that are issuing assets, whether it's real estate, whether it's even like identity or mortgages or deeds and more esoteric things that we haven't come across yet today in the world of tokenization, but I'm pretty sure we will in over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. Those individuals who are issuing these assets don't want all 100% of all their information to be online. They don't even want their transactions to necessarily be on chain, rather. So I think as the tailwinds of institutional adoptions go parabolic, and you start seeing more esoteric and unique applications and assets from the real world come on chain, privacy and encryption really is going to be a core of that. And I would love to know a little bit on how we see the future of even our like overall hush compute layer combined with our MPC having a role in sort of that encryption of not only just assets that are on chain, but also data on chain, which I think could be really valuable for the promotion of real world assets and tokenization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you were just saying. I think it's quite important to push back on some things that people might say, such as, well, what have you got to hide? Why are you trying to? Why do people need privacy when it comes to the crypto space? And there's so many reasons, honestly. And just to give one example, it's quite scary actually how many people get targeted and even kidnapped because all of their holdings are publicly viewable. People get people in the public eye can have their wallet attached to their real identity. There's a lot of platforms like Arkham and similar platforms where people's assets are being tracked, and then it really is a human right to be able to have privacy and transact privately. That's why it's just how cash works, and it's something that's essential in an increasingly online and connected world, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And one argument that I've seen, which I think is really powerful, is the privacy is not new. It's a return to the way things have literally always been for the entirety of history.
That's right.
Right? I mean, this whole kind of world where the government, any government really, can see 100% of every single financial transaction you make and have permanent records of all of that, that's not like the way it's been for thousands of years. No. Like that's been a product of like literally the last 15 or so, 20 years maybe, right? And I think that, if you even go back to the beginning of Bitcoin and the crypto movement, it was this kind of return to some level of internet native self-sovereignty, right? And, self-sovereignty without privacy is kind of not even self-sovereignty in many ways, right? So really what we're focused on, again, is bringing it back to this place of you shouldn't have to have it so that every time you interact with someone on a blockchain, they know 100% about your financial history. They know things about you that, today you wouldn't even tell close friends, how much you're getting paid, how much you pay in rent, all these sort of things, like, how much your house is worth, like how much you have in your investment account. You wouldn't tell anyone this, even if you buy them a slice of pizza, right? You can't get to the point now. It's a normal thing to be able to have this privacy. And I think that, one way that people are definitely going to use this protocol is to have an account that they are using to interact with all the time. That's not linked to the rest of their accounts, right? And that's certainly like one way that I want to use it, where it's like, I'm always sending people some crypto. We all have friends that maybe they're not using it, and you're like, oh, like I'll seed your wallet, I'll give you a few bucks, right? Like I don't necessarily need that person to have permanent access to every transaction I make for the rest of time, and all of my accounts, right? And all of my connected accounts across every blockchain that I've ever interacted with.
Especially as more things come on chain.
100%. And as block explorers get more sophisticated. Which right now they're still very difficult to use, but how long is it going to be until people come out with block explorers that are very intuitive?
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
Orb by Helios, it's a very intuitive blockchain.
Yeah.
Also, embedding AI functionality into these explorers is just going to make it so much easier to track what's happening on chain. And you look at like a lot of what some of these like blockchain security and investigation solutions have done too, is that they've just aggregated the entire blockchain history across Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and they have like all these records, historical records of like tracking criminals, which is net positive for the industry. But it just goes to show, if you actually want to do the work and have all of this accumulation and aggregation of on-chain data, it could be done, right? So I think it's all very important and very good points that we made here. I want to make one clarification: there will be no new token for the Hush protocol. As it relates to Zenrock, all value that Zenrock accumulates flows down. Top down our tokenomics, which you'll see in our light paper that's out now, and ultimately the one token that will ever exist for Zenrock will be the Rock token, which is tradable across all Solana dexes today. So that's one clarification, and I'd love to really close out. If there's anything else you want to add there, Jack.
No, I think first of all, I mean, yes, this is a very big design decision for us, which was that, like, look, we are so excited to launch so much cool stuff, but I think that kind of the launching new tokens for launch, in association with new products has been a very destructive force, I think, and a very trust eroding force throughout the entire industry. So for all the reasons, we've made the strong decision to say, like, look, no matter what, we've said this before, but we'll say it again, and it's just always good to say, like, no matter what we build, the Rock token is the token of the Zenrock ecosystem. That's the way to get exposure to the product, and it's really that simple.
And if you want to learn how to build on a Hush, our SDK should be coming out relatively shortly, start of Q2 very likely, and you learned a lot. I think it was a very informative pod for our audience, between not only what we leverage on the AI side, a little bit of starting out with some macro discussions, which I think is always helpful. And then really understanding on why Zenrock is uniquely positioned to build Hush, the privacy layer on Solana, especially as it relates to combining an enshrined oracle with the MPC. And please check out hushprotocol.xyz. Our docs are live, and you can start shielding Jito Sol today.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could just end with one more question for you, Sasha. Like, if you think about like what Hush Protocol could turn into in like a year, 2 years, right? Like, what is our grand vision for this? Because I think it's so much bigger than what most people are building in privacy. I want to make sure that people fully understand kind of what this is going to grow into over the next year or so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, right now we're positioning ourselves as at launch is the privacy layer of Solana, but because of the foundation that we're building upon, we can become so much more than that. We are building, of course, a lot of it is built on Solana, but we're leveraging zrChain, which, as mentioned earlier, gives us access to so many tools that are essential for cross-chain operations and verification of zero-knowledge apps that is just too heavyweight to be handled on Solana or any kind of general purpose blockchain, monolithic L1 blockchain. And what this what this means is that soon we might not just be the privacy layer of Solana, but the privacy layer of cryptocurrency across every blockchain. Because as we mentioned, MPC is chain agnostic. It works on every blockchain.
Right.
Our Oracle can work on every blockchain. And we have such a strong technical foundation that the sky is the limit.
Right.
We can build anything we want. Maiden VM lets you prove any program that can be written anything that can be written as a program can be proved with Maiden. It's Turing complete. And what's special about Maiden as well is, many zero knowledge stacks such as ZK Sync, SP1, Risk Zero. These are great, protocols and pieces of technology. But one big problem with a lot of this stuff is it's so heavyweight that you have to send private information that you're trying to create a zero knowledge proof of to not reveal that information, which is the entire point of the zero knowledge proof, is that you don't reveal this private information. But if you can't create that zero knowledge proof on your own device that you control, you have to send that private information to a prover server, which is how a lot of these stacks that I mentioned work. But with Maiden, it's done in a lightweight enough way that it can just run in your browser, on your phone, on your laptop, and your secrets never leave your device. So not only is it fully extensible to any app you could possibly want to build, but it's the most private and strongest in terms of the cryptography, quantum resistant. It doesn't need a trusted setup where if the trusted setup is done maliciously, fake proofs can be created.
Right.
It's pretty much the gold standard of privacy in terms of the cryptographic primitives that the entire system is built upon. And I'm so insanely bullish about what we can do with all this great tech we've been building for years. Standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to these amazing open source libraries such as Maiden, built by some of the smartest people in the world. And it's so exciting, and it's a privilege to be able to bring it for you to use and to transact with full peace of mind.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
What a way to end it.
Thanks for joining, Sasha. Thanks for coming to New York City, and
Of
many
course.
more to come.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Awesome.